My husband escaped the war, but I stayed, and what happened next became the stuff of legends. It was chaos. My father raised his rebellion, and my husband and I got word that the capital was no longer safe. We had to leave immediately. But how could we escape with dozens of servants and guards in tow? I told him to go first. He refused, but let's just say he never won an argument with me. Once he was gone, I took charge. I disguised myself as a man, sold off everything we owned, and used the money to help the starving masses. Soon, a small group of desperate souls began to gather around me, hundreds of them ready to fight. But I wasn't going to stop there. I sought out the most feared warlord in the region, a merchant-turned-rebel with tens of thousands of men. I proposed an alliance, but when I showed up, his men laughed in my face. "A woman?" they sneered. "Why don't you join us as the boss's wife instead?" They laughed at me, but by the end of that night, they swore their loyalty, not to my father, but to me. "Why don't you join us as the boss's wife instead?" I smiled, cold as ice. "You're a businessman. Think long-term. My father is the leader of a rebellion you don't want to cross. Align with me and you'll see more fortune than you ever dreamed." By the end of that meeting, they weren't laughing anymore. That night, the warlord swore his loyalty, not to my father, but to me. Within 3 months, I commanded an army of tens of thousands. When the imperial forces came for us, I didn't hide behind my men. I led the charge. Every time they attacked, we sent them running, and each victory brought more troops to my banner. By the time my father's army arrived, I had already secured an entire province. Together we marched on the capital, and the empire fell. My father became emperor, and I became known as the Princess of Pingyang. But the story doesn't end there. My father made history, but I became a legend. They called me the Princess of Pingyang. When my brothers marched to unify the country, I volunteered to guard the borders. I left my husband behind once more, knowing it might be the last time. Years later, when the war was won, news came back. I had fallen in battle. My father, heartbroken, demanded I be buried with full military honors. When the officials protested, saying it wasn't tradition, he roared, "Who dares defy me?" My daughter led armies and faced death head-on. She deserves this more than any man. And so, I became the only woman in history to be buried as a general. They didn't write my name in the records, but the world remembers me as the leader of the ladies' army.